I'm Susan Euler. This program is about Mary Cassatt, an American artist who defied society and went on to become a painter. And not just a painter, but one of the leading painters of the French Impressionist movement. Mary Cassatt was born and raised in Pennsylvania, although she lived most of her adult life in France. Her family was wealthy and really did not object to her studying art. After all, painting was something well-brought-up young ladies should know how to do. However, her parents did object when at age 15 she insisted on enrolling in the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia with the intention of becoming a professional artist. Part of their concern was that at the Pennsylvania Academy, their daughter might be exposed to radical feminist ideas. 20% of the students who studied there were female, although most were not feminists, just ordinary young women who were interested in art, just like Mary Cassatt. That aside, her parents were even more concerned about the ungentlemanly, bohemian, and downright obnoxious behavior of some of the male students. But Cassatt was determined. And so, despite misgivings, her family finally relented and allowed her to enroll, even though this was the very beginning of the American Civil War. Mary Cassatt studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts from 1861 until the end of the war in 1865. By 1865, Cassatt had become thoroughly disillusioned with the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Classes were completely segregated, men in one, women in the other, and the curriculum was different. As Cassatt later recalled, there was no teaching at the academy. Female students could not draw from live models, only from plaster casts, in order to protect their modesty. Male students faced no such obstacle. And to make matters worse, the male faculty as well as the male students were patronizing and resentful of women even being allowed to enroll. So, Mary Cassatt decided to end her studies and move to Paris to study the old masters on her own. In 1866, at the age of 22, Mary Cassatt moved to Paris. Her mother and several family friends went along to make sure she was safe. She had no illusion that she could enroll in the prestigious L'École des Beaux-Arts, the School of Fine Arts, because in 1866 it did not admit women students. However, she was accepted as a private student by the noted neoclassical artist Jean-Léon Gérôme. Gérôme's style, as well as his attitude towards art, was very conservative, but he could draw extremely well and was an excellent teacher. Cassatt also obtained a permit to become a copyist in the Louvre. A copyist, most copyists were women in the 19th century, painted copies of famous paintings which they would then sell. Other copyists, both men and women, were art students who copied famous artworks to learn the painting techniques of the old masters. This is still going on today. Because French law, as well as societal norms, did not allow women to gather in public places unaccompanied by men, cafes and bars where male artists hung out were off limits to Cassatt. Well, not totally off limits. Women did go to these places, but these women were actresses, showgirls, and prostitutes, not well-brought-up young ladies like Mary Cassatt. But everyone could go to the Louvre. It was the place where women artists met to exchange ideas, make friends, and yes, meet guys, because lots of male artists hung out at the Louvre as well. Impressionist EDGAR did a number of paintings, drawings, and prints of Cassatt and her sister Lydia as they walked through the Louvre. Degas and Cassatt will remain lifelong friends. After returning to the United States during the Franco-Prussian War, Cassatt moved back to France in 1874, where she will live for the rest of her life. 1874 was a landmark year for art because this is the year the Impressionists held their first exhibit. It was not a total success. Some critics panned it, but many people loved it. Perhaps more importantly at this stage, It gave the participating artists a great deal of publicity and earned them a reputation for being in the forefront of modern art. Edgar Degas was a founding member of the Impressionists. He first met Mary Cassatt in 1877 when he visited her studio. On seeing her work, he reportedly remarked, "There is somebody who feels as I do." He asked her to exhibit in the next Impressionist show, their fourth, which was scheduled for 1879. She accepted and exhibited 11 paintings. Mary Cassatt would exhibit with the Impressionists again in 1880, in 1881, and in 1886. 1886 was the last Impressionist group show, and by that time the style had evolved into something quite different. Monet refused to participate because Georges Seurat and Paul Signac were showing their neo-impressionist or pointillist works, something which Monet heartily disapproved. Mary Cassatt herself felt that she was really no longer an impressionist, and after 1886 her work moved in a new direction. In the spring of 1890, Cassatt saw an exhibit of Japanese woodblock prints at l'École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. She was enthralled by their linear delicacy, tipped-up perspective, flattened forms, and broad planes of contrasting decorative patterns. She went back to her studio and began experimenting with printmaking, using a process that combined etching, dry point, and aquatint rather than the traditional woodblock method used by the Japanese. The resulting prints are original and, although reminiscent of Japanese work, reflect her own unique sense of color, composition, and design. The style of her oil paintings also changed, moving away from the earlier sketchy brushstrokes of Impressionism to large, flatly painted areas of color and tipped-up perspective in the manner of Japanese prints. Mary Cassatt was not only a painter and an expert printmaker, but she also did pastels. And I think her pastels are some of her most successful works. It was Edgar Degas who first introduced Mary Cassatt to pastels. She saw some of his works hanging in an art gallery several years before she met Degas himself, and was hugely impressed. Like those of Degas, Cassatt's pastels are fresh and sketchy, with brilliant, bold colors, expert drawing, and strong, direct compositions. Working not only on traditional pastel paper, but on canvas and canvas board, nearly all of her pastels are portraits. In this early work, which is pastel on canvas board, Cassatt has added metallic gold paint to the fan to make it catch the light. Using mixed media some 30 years before Picasso invented collage, this shows what an edgy avant-garde artist Cassatt really was. And she was also a feminist. Her parents predicted that, didn't they? The term used in the late 19th century was New Woman. Her negative experience in art school, as well as the many obstacles she faced as a woman artist in a male-dominated profession, gave Mary Cassatt a sense of mission as an outspoken advocate for women and women's rights. Cassatt also championed the cause of modern art and encouraged her family and friends, notably the Havemeyers, to buy the paintings, sculptures, and prints of modern French masters. The Havemeyers, who eventually amassed a significant collection of Impressionist work, were the first American collectors to buy a Monet. Most of the Havemeyer collection is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. In 1891, Mary Cassatt was asked by Chicago businesswoman Bertha Palmer to paint a gigantic 12-foot by 56-foot mural for the Woman's Building of the World's Columbian Exposition, held in Chicago in 1893. Unfortunately, these murals no longer exist, except in old photographs. Cassatt's focus was on women achieving success independent of men, accomplished persons in their own right. This certainly describes the remarkable life and career of Mary Cassatt herself. For the 10-Minute Professor, this is Susan Ray Euler. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure you watch our next program.